All right. Hello, hello, hello. Right. I know we're right on the dot, so I'm sure folks will take a moment to meander in. So I will just start with a little introduction, um, just to get that out of the way before we get into the topic. So if you haven't seen me before, I think I've been associated with Pineapple Support, I believe since really the beginning, a little bit after the beginning of them coming into creation. So my name is Rachael Wells. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I am based in Florida, so I am in the States. So thank you, wherever you are. I know a lot of people, pineapple is international, so whatever time it is for me, it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's me. I specialize in things such as definitely and obviously the adult industry, kink, polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, BDSM, borderline personality disorder, dissociative conditions, PTSD, autism, a lot. So I'm glad that you're here today. Other tidbits to know about me are pronouns are they, them. I am on the autism spectrum, so if I do something a little odd or funky. So without further ado, we are going to get into our topic today, which is called Coming Out of Shame, Destigmatizing the Whore and Reauthorizing the Slut. So we're going to be looking at just notions and stigmas around these terms, people that either identify with them or have had it misused against them. We're going to try to tease out a lot of information about this and then do a little bit of touching on how do we, if we do feel shamed or some sort of inner monologue from society, parents, the past, that these are, bad things and labels that we're not comfortable with, how to work out of shame and feel more visible and unapologetic in the types of work that we do. Um, so we're going to actually start with if you are familiar or not, the Madonna whore complex. So some of us may know this, some of us may have heard it some long good time ago, and I am just going to show a little tiny picture um, of what that can kind of look like. So as we see here, a lot of folks, specifically, I would say those assigned female at birth or those that are femme in some way or feel a connection to that, feel like they have these two choices in life. I'm either, as we see with this little bit over here on the left, um, I'm attractive, I'm confident, I'm out there, I'm, with a lot of people. People are, begging to be with me and see me, or I just have to be this kind of supplicant, compliant, step by step marriage, wife material, as you see here on the right with this person kind of just looking like they're in a store window, perhaps. So when we talk about this is where I feel like this is where it all begins, is this complex. So it's a trope, if we're not familiar with that. Um, there's a lot of psychology behind it. So it's really these two paths of good or bad, if we're going to go to very, very black and white. So it's this polarized perception of you're either good, chaste, pure, or you're bad, you're promiscuous, you're seductive, which are really words that we're realizing now are just ways to silence and make people small that are confident, open in their sexuality, exploratory, curious, and basically taking what's theirs. So this stems from a desire to reinforce black and white thinking, more patriarchal views. Um, so a lot of times what people say that they experience is that they feel like someone is treating them like one or the other, or they're getting confused if they meet someone and they are exhibiting healthy and open sexuality, but are also, running their work or doing X, Y, and Z, and they feel like somebody keeps just trying to put them into one or other of these boxes. It has a lot of negative implications for mental health. And I think we could see exactly how this would apply to folks in the industry, um, where people are using this dichotomy, or they're choosing. What really gets lost here is individualism. So when folks in the industry have come to me and talked to me about, why do people seem to see me as like one facet of who I am, no matter how I show up, how I dress, how I exist, who I am off camera, off screen, I'm only viewed in this one very specific way. A lot of times people, for example, there is a convention nearby that is related to kink. A lot of adult industry folks go. And a lot of worries and complaints that I heard were about, I am off, even though, yes, I'm here to talk and to integrate with people and to do some, kind of admin. Let me chat with people that I know out there. But people are still thinking that they can come up and touch me in certain specific ways. They're thinking that they can start a scene with me right here and there, when I'm sitting in my, robe or chilling by the pool. And then suddenly I'm expected to always be in more of the quote, whore complex, instead of the duality of all of us in the world, and specifically in the industry, which I think relates to a lot of worries about relationships. I hear a lot that trying to find someone that understands what it's like to be in the industry and or truly respects it, um, can be difficult, because people still feel like, well, you're this other person sometimes. Why are you not this in the bedroom with me in this relationship that we have? Or why are you doing this? Or why are you doing that? And I've noticed that it seems to go back to this dichotomy, where we're just not seeing, I'll say mostly women and femmes, as able to be beyond any other role. There's a lot of just psychological cost to this that, I wonder if anyone here has gone through. Obviously, I love the Q&A because you can also share your personal experiences if you so choose. The difficulty is that, when you are providing, say, a service in the industry, that's okay. But that if you don't continue to provide it, or you have a personal day, or you have needs, that now you're looked at in a way of condemnation. You're judged, you're blamed, you're no longer acceptable. Because that's the thing, is that you must stay strictly in one of these roles. So if you are dissociating from one of them, we have to think and realize that we're actually talking to human beings, which I think speaks to the dehumanization of people in the adult industry, is how there's just so much othering, because people are not grasping the different roles that people are able to take on when they're doing their sex work. And it gets into stuff like, does this person enjoy it? Do they not? Is this how they're like all the time? And people are just not grasping that many times people are in the industry because it allows them freedom. They're able to have flexibility and freedom like no other, that it accommodates their disability, that allows them to express themselves confidently, it allows them to experiment. Um, they feel like it's something that they're able to do. Um, it provides a sense of comfort. I mean, there's so many reasons, but people will always put it down to this way of questioning people. Now, when we get into the labels, how many times have we heard these labels? Whore, slut. And when somebody is called this, it's supposed to strip the humanity from that person. And it's a really great way to silence people quickly based on a specific sexual status. And it's a very calculated move, especially depending on who's using this word. A lot of times, it is women using it against other women, and there can be an internalized sexism piece, but there's also sometimes a bit of a calculated move to elevate status. There might be something to gain. You know, if you're a polished, quote, nice girl, you could have as much sex as you please and escape the label. But where these labels are typically used are on people that come from a sort of different or marginalized background. For instance, you know, I've heard many times like college stories where people will be like, you know, this Christian woman, you know, who was in the sorority, was quite sexually active, as is her right, and no one really said anything because there was some look of purity, look of the Madonna state of affairs. But if we're talking about somebody who maybe came from less economic privilege, appeared less traditionally feminine, really anything that was a marginalization, especially with folks of color, that's who's getting the label. It's a bit of a sexual privilege, and I've always liked when it comes to the deeper meaning when people are trying to be derogatory, I'm always of the belief of there are no sluts. There are only people that you're trying to remove from social influence and put out there. Now, when it comes to reclaiming terms and looking at it in a positive way, that's a different story. These labels are not about what you did and with whom, but like what it said about you. If you've ever been called these in a derogatory ways and you know that behind someone's words they were trying to demean you, they're trying to speak of your character. They're trying to other you or reject you, because a lot of things boil back down to power and control issues. Yay, our favorite. Most of the time, if we boil things down, we're going to find power, control, shame, guilt, you know, some of the good basics. So that stigma, you know, the stigma of the whore or the slut can't really be challenged by rejecting a label. So no matter if you insist, like, no, I'm not, or yes, I am, it's just drawing a line. You know, it's making up an expectation there. So when it comes to the industry, why these labels are used in a derogatory fashion towards people in the industry is because apparently adult sex workers are supposed to be responsible for everything. And that's where I think it's great to be able to take a stand and surround yourself amongst people that do similar work. There's nothing more powerful, I feel like, than people in the industry coming together. Because I think we're often taught, and I say we because I was formerly in the industry for what it's worth. That doesn't mean that I know everything about what's going on right now in this day and age, but you know, when we come together, it's immensely powerful because we're supposed to be in this competition. It's supposed to be I'm trying to get higher on the MFC ranking, or I'm trying to do this, or I need new ideas for something, and this person has really good ideas and I need them. And just a lot of competition when all of us are so creative. Um, so the responsibility piece, people use these words towards us because we've got, and I know I'm going into like patriarchy, traditional family, like potentially challenging topics. Just kind of as a disclaimer, I'm not here to sound like I'm hating on anyone, but just to highlight real things that happen and that affect us, because behavior always boils down to something. We don't just do things just because, uh, even if we don't always know exactly why or who taught us, etc. The breakdown of the quote traditional family, that is what sex workers are seen as challenging. Because when I think of sex work, I think of freedom, creativity, and openness. A lot of things that people would do anything to be in touch with, but feel that because it has that kind of Christian moralism, purity culture piece around it, that nope, but not that way. I want to feel free and creative and joyful, but not that way, because we're supposed to keep it in this very specific traditional family way. And then when that's challenged, we have to think of other roles. In a quote traditional family, we're looking at, I can't even remember the percentage. Was it 3.5 kids or 2.5 kids or some sort of joke? Mother, father, a child or more. And everyone has their roles and everyone gets specific needs from each other. No one's supposed to go outside of that, challenge themselves. No one's supposed to consider their gender, sexuality, career goals, life, what they want in a community. They're just supposed to stay right here in the little triangle in the house. We're also often blamed for infections, diseases, crime. And this even goes to people that don't do any street work at all. That there's just this bad, the spooky ghoul there who is just ruining everything that a family is about. Well, what people are telling us when they say that is that they know that they are standing on shaky foundation. Because when we all feel confident in our chosen lives, which can be a traditional family, it can be a non-traditional, it can be anything, that when we're confident in that, we're not pointing fingers and policing anyone else's lifestyle. Also, a lot of this has to do with appropriate sexuality. If you want to share, please do. Q&A. I think the chat is still locked for whatever reason. I would be curious if anyone wants to share about what they were told appropriate sexuality is. You might think back to health class, if you had one. You might think back to parents, what they were saying. What is appropriate sexuality? With whom is it with? And when? And what are you doing? And what's the expectation for that long term? I know being raised in Florida, which if you know anything about Florida in the news, especially now, we're pretty shut down on education here. So I was raised in the abstinence only classes. There's a piece there. So abstinence only unless, and then there's all this expectation of what's appropriate. A real large piece of this fear mongering, these people are going to take away, our family. And, if you've ever seen that meme about like, I'm going to become a lesbian and, have sex and do witchcraft, it's kind of like that. It's joking about the fear of challenging, society. And instead of looking at it as all sorts of differences that people can add to life, it's looked at challenging. Don't challenge what I know because I don't want to know that there could be anything else. But, a lot of folks in the industry are made up of marginalized groups, which we could go into all the groups and track back how they've all been scapegoated and othered. So when it comes to stigma, stigma is very context specific. Um, some people that are seen as more affluent or do adult industry work in a very specific way are seen as more acceptable. For instance, I've seen people that do escorting seen as a little more acceptable, or people that do like low to non-nude OnlyFans style stuff, that's acceptable. You're still keeping it respectable, is something that I've heard, which apparently respectable is purity culture. So, oh, I see Q&A things. Okay. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. So someone here, also, if you are okay with me saying your name out loud, you can let me know, but I always default to, not saying it, although I think folks can see it. Yes. So a lot of the appropriate sexuality is it must be heteronormative. All the stuff around virginity, if you're not familiar, if you've heard of the, crumpled piece of paper, the crumpled flower, yikes. Saving yourself for marriage, and if you don't, you will be like that. Take a rose and smash it up, or take a piece of paper. Oh, can you get it flat again? No. Well, that's you. I don't know if this is a more westernized way of teaching. Very likely it is, but if you haven't heard that, that's some of the expectation is you are essentially broken, damaged goods. A lot of fear mongering about pregnancy. Of course, there will be no information around prophylactics and anything, empowering, anything that would be protective. That's considered no. I'm thinking of conversations I've gotten into with family members where we're fighting about birth control and abortion. I know you're probably thinking, Rachel, why are you talking about this with your family? Why are you talking about this? Let's not talk about politics or religion. I don't like to sit by, and I feel comfortable enough with my family to hold them to task sometimes. But I've gotten into these conversations about, well, we can't make birth control free or accessible. It needs to only be for certain types of people. That would be the people practicing appropriate sexuality, by the way. But no one can get an abortion. Okay, so how's that going to work? Because people are not going to prescribe to your expectations. So that's the thing that I feel like is a big trouble, is that we think that because we believe or think a certain way, that people are going to follow suit. So if I say, oh, abstinence only until marriage, that everyone is supposed to do that. So therefore, no one will use birth control or use abortion services. That is not true. So if we're putting our money where our mouth is and being for real, you're going to have to pick one or both of those to be accessible. Because saying, well, people will just have to not have sex or not engage in industry work or not do this or whatever is not a thing that's going to be happening. So that's fun. Also, someone said, having sex with women and doing witchcraft, I'm nailing this life. Yes, you are. So congratulations. You have won. So I want to read to y'all this quote. And just a heads up, it is more about street sex work. So if that's more specific to you, be in mind. It can be a little triggering, just the attitude behind it. So this is from an anonymous John. I believe it was in early 2000s, 2003 or so. This person said, when there's violence, it is mostly and they use the word prostitute's fault. See, I am going to buy something. If I am satisfied with what I'm buying, then why should I be violent? I will be violent when I am cheated, when I am offered a substandard service. Sometimes violence is because the prostitute wants the client to use condoms. They force it on the client. He will naturally be disgruntled and there will be altercations. Okay, I think we can all see how that epitomizes a lot of the stigma and discrimination. So we're saying that sex workers create disease, breakdown of the family, and yet someone is saying, I want to take away their autonomy so they can't protect themselves. But that's how we get back to that complex. It's like only in this realm are you supposed to act this way. You should be just like an object, ready to do anything, but protect yourself, be safe, call a friend, um, have blacklists, do stuff. No, you can't do that because then that means that there's another part of you that's not just the person who I see here, um, on camera, online, in the streets, in the hotel room. It's so interesting to think about. Um, so I think breaking out of these complexes ask that, again, we come together with people, and warning signs and red flags and how to kind of reauthor ourselves is realizing, journaling on, thinking on, and processing how we are all these different roles. There's an activity I do with a lot of people where I ask them to describe all of the roles that they take up in life. Many times you'll get brother, sibling, aunt, friend, worker, YouTuber, this, that, and the third. Like people just use all the way to describe who they are to themselves, to other people, and to the world as a whole. And realizing that the one that people choose to fixate on is just one, and it is crucial and important and valid and worthy of respect, and it's just one. And if people can't see that, this includes clients, friends, potential partners, and family, that it's okay to take space. I am not someone who's like, yeah, let's cut off and ghost everyone. However, for our mental health and safety in this day and age where these stigmas are not gone, people just package them a little bit differently. It tends to be a little more covert, although sometimes it's overt. We're all still fighting this. So to take power back is one, to realize who you are and what you're about at the end of the day. I think of a lot of my like lesbian folks that I'm friends with who are in the industry, and they're like, LOL, I don't care about any of these people. They just have like a very humorous way. They're like, okay, they really think I'm in love with them, but my goodness, like, right. Like that's their own kind of fantasy perception of me. Is to be able to take that back in a healthy way for you, without feeling like it's fracturing who you are. It's really important that we're around people that respect that. If somebody keeps using language of like, you know, many times people have another name for their industry self. People keep referencing you as that, and it's not like a friend who you've agreed to call each other that. Um, or they keep asking for something that you only do in that role, or they seem to have certain thoughts about your perceptions about the world based on things. For instance, like people that do a lot of dom work, and might do degradation work. People are questioning like, are you really like that? Like, you're mean, you're a bitch. And it's like, okay, so if we're hearing things like that, even if insinuated, it's okay to pull back. Many times, it can trigger our past trauma and make us think like, I guess that really is me. or, well, they're the only person who understands me, so even if they're talking this mess, I guess I have to hang around them. No. It reminds me of the work that I do with people around their clientele. A lot of people feel like, okay, for me to get started in this work, in this industry work, I need to be everything to everyone. I need to do all the kinks. I need to be available 24/7. I need to be on all the platforms, even the ones that aren't accessible to me or don't work or I don't like or I don't want to manage or feel unsafe or don't have good practices. And people push themselves beyond their boundaries, not just a gentle challenge or a curiosity or an openness, but a pushing beyond. And that is something to take back. And it's terrifying. And I'm not going to act like I know what it's like to do that right now. But I think it's crucial to teach people how to treat us. To be like, okay, nope, I don't respond to these certain, names or ways of engaging. I don't want to talk to you after these certain hours. I'm not going to build friendships. I'm not going to give you my personal social media. I'm not going to do things just because you demand them, because a lot of people really do get over familiar with folks in the industry. And if you want to share, if you feel like this applies to you, or if you've had people be over familiar, I think of when someone just starts trying to dom someone online, like they're like, you get a message and it's like, you will do this. I need a video of you doing this by 2 p.m. today. Just this over familiar, like you're talking to an object. If we're seeing that, any behavior in that realm, we have to cut it off. And yes, sometimes it will feel like you are challenging your income, or what people know about you. And yet, when it comes to mental health, because I feel like even though mental health isn't exactly the topic of what we're talking about today, which is a very nuanced and complex situation, Pineapple Support is about mental health. So we're always going to kind of come back there, is that to protect our mental health, rejecting when we see people categorizing us in these ways, with labels and othering, and trying to trust our intuition. If you feel like you've lost your intuition due to trauma or just people pleasing, both, people kind of stepping on you, the first way to get it back is to listen to your body. You can even have like a friend role play with you. A lot of times I'll come up with something and be like, okay, let's say, I know it feels like we're getting off topic. I promise I'll rein it in. Um, but I feel like this is all related. I'll ask people, okay, let's say I say, please watch my, which I don't have, but please watch my 3 children tomorrow. I really need you to do it. I have, work that I have to go to. Unfortunately, it's going to run late, so I'm going to need you to watch them until 1 a.m. Now, I know that I'm not literally asking any of you listening, but sometimes even just hearing that request gives us a little oof. Now, some of you may actually enjoy this. That's fine, but most of the time when I share that question, people are like, oof, ugh. That's your intuition speaking. It's usually, you can't see, but my hand is on my stomach. We can usually feel something there, like a little tap. It's like, that doesn't really fit with my needs, lifestyle, desire. It interrupts a routine. Um, so what I'm getting at here is that's how to start building up our intuition. Another little tidbit trick that I use is if sometimes people put the pressure on, clients do. Um, they're getting over familiar, they're putting you in certain roles, is saying if you need an answer now, it's going to be a no. If I have some time to think on this and process it, we'll see. But if you need a reply right now, it will be a no. Because many times we get pressured that we're supposed to be something to somebody, that we're supposed to perform, we're masking. And then we end up saying yes to things that we never intended to do. And that's what I call the override button. Because we're just, every time that happens, we're just smashing it. And a lot of times this does come from the past. Maybe when you were little, you said, okay, my stomach really hurts. I really think I should go home or go to the nurse. And then a teacher or parent on the phone says, come on, get over it. It's not a big deal. You've dealt with this before. That's the override button being pressed on your behalf. You coming home and saying, this person was really unkind to me. Like they're a bully. I don't like them. Come on, that's the most popular kid at school. Can't you just bear it and deal with it? And maybe you'll end up, with some good folks. Override button. So trusting our intuition. That's what it gets back to. And that's a lot of personal work that obviously I encourage you to do amongst peers, with a professional if you so desire, to work on that. Because when it comes back to this larger, I know we just went from a small little microcosm and we're going back to the macrocosm of, the reauthoring of ourselves and destigmatizing. It does start with those things. Because if we feel like we need to be in this back and forth complex, or we're only valid or seen as good or profitable or enjoyable is when we're doing our industry work, that's a problem. Because as much as it is valuable and worthy of respect and incredibly difficult and challenging work, um, we want to always feel worthy of acceptance, and that it's not only when we put on a certain mask, a role, or a name that we are. It also helps challenge ourselves and other people's beliefs about this kind of Madonna whore you know complex, and how to heal from those effects. So other ways to heal from this and begin kind of reauthoring for yourself what slut, whore, what that means to you, if you want to reclaim those words. Some people love it and they like just thrive on it. Please do. It's a great way to say F off basically to all of that stuff if you feel like it fits you. Um, because those are generally like whorephobic slurs when used by people that mean it in a derogatory fashion. So when you're able to take it back, if you so choose, that's a way to own it and understand that people, when they're saying that, as we talked about before, they're really using it as like a social and sexual privilege to other. So when you refuse to be othered, that's great. Like, for instance, I've taken back a lot of ableist slurs. I'm not saying that I'm throwing them out there, but right, as somebody who the R word was used against, crazy, insane, I'm just like, okay, sure, whatever. It's up to you. Making a really good effort to understand your personal beliefs about sexuality. Um, do you think that your beliefs are the only right way? Is punishment at all, besides in a potentially fun, kinky way, is that involved in sex at all? Do you feel like there's certain views or things that are just not acceptable? Um, do your beliefs, have you seen them harm others? Have others' beliefs harmed you? What have they kind of planted? And then what has society tried to get to grow out of those beliefs? And most importantly, where did you learn them? If out of all of those questions and more that I'll mention is thinking about where did you learn these? Because a lot of times we just think like, oh, it's around. And if we've had a not so great past for whatever reason, there might be some dissociation or disconnect. But I really encourage you to sit down with maybe a journal or a voice memo. Just really think, where did this come from? And most of the time it's hard to pick up on because it might be those more covert beliefs. Not if you do this, you'll be a slut. Sometimes people heard that in their house, but other times it was more, should you, that skirt's a little short. Your uncle is coming over. Huh, okay, strange. Or that's a little revealing. Oh, I'm going to sign you out of health class for that day. That's a little too much for you at this age. Um, what kind of content you were being shown as a child? I mean, we can't always escape. Pretty much everything has a lot of tropes in it, especially stuff that we may have been seeing in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Um, but really, I love media literacy. That's something that probably changed my life. Shout out to Bitch Magazine, which no longer exists. Unfortunately, I learned like everything from them. But media literacy, like what was I watching? What was I taking in? Was it very heteronormative? Was there, jokes about abuse towards different types of people? Was it normalized? How are we talking about sex and sexuality? How were we categorizing people in certain ways? Did this come from my parents, or did my parents say nothing? Some people, it's not really discussed. You just might sit and watch TV together, and maybe you'll glean some information based on what they're showing. But other than that, that's a topic for friends, the church, or school. Those are other places to think about. Did we learn it from TV, parents, church, school, our peers, all of the above? And challenge those shaming messages. If you feel like you're hearing stuff that's about, intimacy can only look like this, or if I do this, people can label me this, or because I've chosen to be in this field, I guess I revoked my rights to respect dignity or personal sexuality. Now, it's probably not going to come across that clear in your brain, but if you feel like you're hearing things along those realms, write it down and work through it, because it can be just kind of toxic in our mind, and we're often not used to questioning our brain, because our brain it just does stuff. Sometimes, we often take it as a command, demand, truth, something to obey. So a lot of times our brain just says, oh, well, and I hear this a lot. Oh, well, I joined this field and this type of work, so I guess I get what I get. Hmm? Hold on. Wait. Or feeling in any way that someone is invalid. Like, I know a lot of folks that are um, aromantic, asexual in the industry, and that is perfectly acceptable and doesn't mean anything, nor is anyone's business if we don't choose to share. That's another intuition boundary that we can also work on, is who do I want to share this with? What other belief systems am I seeing out there? Um, so I will leave us some time for any Q&A, questions, thoughts. I know we went to a lot of different topics. That is my style with a very large topic such as this, where we're basically just trying to figure out how to manage stigma and shame. Um, but if I don't see anything, I will just share to go off of that, because I know I'm like, oh, write that down and work on it. I understand that that's not like a full plan for how to process through things. Really, really strongly recommend Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. She does a lot of research on self-compassion. There's some great tangible exercises you can write, listen to, or practice if you feel like this stigma, or really any other stigmas, or the complexities of multiple stigmas due to intersectionality are hurting you. This is a way to give back to you. Now, I say that to not say that you have to do all the work. No, we need society to keep doing the work to undo these things. Um, of course, engaging with Pineapple, I'm always going to shout that out. You know, the chat line, the support groups, the webinars, the drop-ins. You know, getting involved. You know, they have ambassadors as well. There's so much going on social media and everywhere else. Um, you know, Cupcake Girls, they're a really cool group. Just surrounding yourself with people who really care about this industry instead of feeling like, okay, just, you know, I'm not saying that you need to surround yourself all the time and feel like you're constantly in industry mode, but making sure that you know who and what is out there to give you real, like, evidence-based practices and support, instead of people that really aren't in the know, because I find that's where things go kind of squirrely. If you need anything, you can always reach out to Pineapple. If you need anything from me specifically, they can always get you in touch with me. I do a lot of webinars for them. I think I've done, well, now it's October. I did 2 last month and 1 today. So thank you for kind of, you know, sitting, listening. I know this is a big, big topic. So I appreciate you taking some time out for yourself just to, you know, hopefully hear something helpful and kind. Yes, you are so welcome. It has been my pleasure, y'all. So take a good care of yourself, and I hope the rest of your day, weekend, and the rest is beautiful. And it's very, very early, but happy early Halloween if you enjoy. And I'll see you around. Take care, y'all.